So in the Bulls' last 4 games, they lose to one of the worst teams in the league, if not the worst team in the league, especially considering the Wizards were playing their G League squad. They then follow that up with a game by playing against a tough Pacers team who is one of the best offensive teams in the NBA, leading the league in points per game, and they somehow hold them to under 100 points for the first time in their season and get the win. They follow that game up by losing to a struggling Brooklyn Nets team in which they allowed them to put up 25 threes on the game, and they themselves shoot 9 for 30 from 3. And now they go on the road against one of the better teams in the league at the top of the Western Conference, the best defensive team in the NBA. And they put up 63 points on them in the first half and would go on to win said game by playing one of the better defensive games of the season on some of the most efficient offense, again, against the number 1 defensive team in the league. This team does not make any sense. They make absolutely no sense. It's the most frustrating thing ever, but I still love it when we see games like this, a win like this. The Bulls came out strong, brought great energy, were locked in on defense, had an incredible first half where they had already exceeded the amount of threes made in that first half than they did the entire last game against the Nets, in large part thanks to Caruso, who went 5 for 5 from deep by halftime. He would then later go on to hit a career high in threes, going 7 for 8 for the night, but more on Caruso in a little bit. And while the first half was impressive, I was still a little skeptical that the Bulls would be able to maintain 60+% shooting and lighting up the Wolves from 3, and sure enough, it was starting to look like the Bulls were going to blow this game. After having a 16-point lead in the third quarter where they were turning the ball over and allowing a lot of points in transition, the shots weren't falling down like we saw in the first half, and then by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, it was almost like you saw the classic Bulls falling apart after having a solid lead in the second half, where the Wolves actually took the lead themselves at one point, but very briefly, as the Timberwolves would only lead by 2 with a few minutes left to go. And those possessions with about 2 minutes left in the game where DeMar hit that big 3 to put them back up 2. The Wolves came back with a quick empty possession. Bulls missed, but they get the offensive rebound. Caruso hits another 3 to put them back up 4. I was shocked that Timberwolves didn't call timeout there. Caruso on the other end comes up with a steal, which was his 5th steal of the night. They push it in transition, and Coby lays it in quickly to go from the Bulls trailing by 1 with 3:30 left in the game to then leading by 7 with 2 minutes left to go. And the Bulls never looked back after that. Like, even though a 7-point lead with 2 minutes left in the NBA is nothing anymore, they only allow the Wolves to score 2 points from that point on. And then, of course, Coby hits the dagger 3 when they needed it most to put this team away. It went from a potential collapse of the Bulls to them turning the tables and forcing the Wolves to collapse themselves. So look, what I'll say about this game is this. We know this team is one of the most inconsistent teams in the NBA. We know they're not a title team. We know they're at best a first-round exit as the 8th seed by way of the play-in. We know what the ceiling is of this team, and nothing has changed that. But a win like this, and after seeing the way they showed up against the Pacers the other night, gives me much more confidence in how the Bulls will show up in the play-in game, because the Bulls play their best when the competition level is at its peak. They like the big moments, they get up for games against the better teams in the NBA, and they play down to their competition and don't take the bad team seriously. It's maddening to see as a fan because you're a professional basketball team and need to come ready to play no matter what, and if the Bulls had just gotten their act together and won games against teams they were supposed to, you'd be looking at a very different season, and a seeding that was going to be much more manageable in the playoffs rather than at best seeing the Boston Celtics in the first round. And yes, it is at best seeing Boston in the first round, as they aren't going to move up to the 8th and potentially win that first play-in game to get the 7th seed. But either way, it gives me more confidence that the Bulls are going to come ready to play against that 9-10 play-in matchup against the Atlanta Hawks, who they actually play tomorrow night in a back-to-back. That said, we probably shouldn't expect anything from this team on a night-to-night basis. So I say a game like this gives me more confidence, but who the hell knows at this point. But I did want to start with Alex Caruso in this ballgame. You just can't say enough about how great he has been and the level of impact he has on this team every night he steps onto the court. And we've said before, we already know the defensive impact he brings. Elite level first team all defense. Tonight he gets 5 steals, finished with a 4x5 game, by the way, tallying at least 5 points, rebounds, assists, and steals. Obviously the most rare to achieve being a 5x5 game to include blocks, but for Caruso, it was more than just his top-notch defense, where he limited one of the most explosive players in the league right now, who has been on an absolute tear. And I know it wasn't AC guarding Anthony Edwards on every possession, but he was on him a fair amount and held him to 9 for 20 from shooting, 0 for 5 from 3. And it wasn't just limiting Edwards, it was Caruso's ability to be everywhere they needed him to be in getting in the passing lanes and forcing turnovers. But not only that, having one of the most efficient nights on offense of his career. He only took threes in this game, went 7 for 8 from deep. Dude made his first 6 threes without missing. 5 rebounds, 5 assists, again 5 steals, 4x5 game in the stat sheet, 21 points. Just an incredible performance and effort from Alex Caruso. Bulls don't win this game without him, plain and simple. Coby White, while he was a little quiet in this game, especially in the first half, didn't take a ton of shots. The ones he did take, though, he was hitting them and finally starting to look back to his normal self and getting out of that shooting slump. He went 4 for 6 from 3, 6 for 10 from the floor overall, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 17 points in 41 minutes. Bulls are going to need Coby White to be at his absolute best come playing time. They're going to need his shooting to draw defenses away from guys like DeMar, Caruso, and even Vucevic to spread the floor and give the Bulls more open looks. I mean, the thing about this game is you look at the box score and you see the Bulls shot an insane 17 for 29 from 3 on 58% shooting from 3 against the best defense in the NBA. Well, a lot of that was because they were getting wide open looks. The Bulls were not only moving the ball well, but when guys are heating up and you have multiple weapons from outside, it opens up so many possibilities on offense where you're seeing Caruso get many more open looks and you trust that he's going to knock those down because he's open. When teams have to guard Coby more heavily, it opens up so much more for the rest of the guys to generate offense. Now, of course, DeMar still playing incredibly well. There were a few moments here and there and questionable shot selection in the fourth quarter. He was trying to take over, but hitting that 3 to put them back up was big time. He still finished the game with 8 assists while also putting up 27 points on 11 for 23 shooting to also go along with a steal and a block. And then Vucevic, there were frustrating things about Vuce, what he did in this game, like we usually see sometimes, committing some frustration fouls, not hustling back on defense, getting beat badly in the paint. But for going up against Rudy Gobert, the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year, I actually thought he did decently well. I'm not going to say it was a great game for him, but it was okay. 19 points on 50% shooting, even hit a couple threes, which is always rare to see from Vuce these days. 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals. Like, he was contributing. It was much more engaged than we saw the other night against the Nets. So it was a solid game for him, and limiting also Gobert to just 10 rebounds, which I know sounds like a lot, but he's the second best rebounder in the game, averaging over 13 rebounds. And you did a good job boxing him out to not give him as many offensive rebounds and second chance points. The only time Gobert actually got offensive boards in this game is when he pushed guys in the back and got away with an offensive foul. But yeah, I mean, the Bulls, another 30 assist game on one of the best shooting nights from 3 of their season and from the field overall. 11 steals, they out-rebounded the bigger Timberwolves. Bulls did have too many turnovers, 16 in total, but you kind of expect that from a great defensive team to force so many turnovers, but it didn't matter all that much because the Bulls forced a lot of turnovers of their own, handing the Wolves 15 and scoring 17 points offset turnovers. So yeah, a great win for this team. Not really sure if we'll actually see some semblance of consistency for the rest of the season. In my video from earlier this morning and predicting the Bulls' 8 remaining games in the year, I had them losing this game, but beating the Hawks. So watch, we're now going to see them lose back at home tomorrow against Atlanta. But we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, guys, as always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.